What is up, guys? So I just completed my first marathon ever with 5 months of total experience. 5 months ago, May of this year, I had never ran in my life, never played sports in school, was not an athlete. I wasn't in horrible shape, but I was not a runner, not a hobby jogger. And in 5 months, we went from 0 miles per week to 26.2 miles this past Sunday. So to give you a quick idea, I'm just going to do this as one take. I don't feel like editing some big video. I'm going to give you a few different points that we're going to go over, and then hopefully you can skip ahead to those if you're looking for something specific. So first, we'll talk about some background info on me and the training that I did for these 20 weeks, 5 months, going from not being a runner to running a marathon. And that'll probably be a longer part of the video because that is important. And if you're new or you're looking to do this, or if you want to know if it's possible, this is what's going to help you the most. And then that will bridge into talking about difficulties that I had, which was primarily one injury, which is a common thing, and how to potentially prevent that so that you don't have to go through the same thing I did. Then we'll talk about race week. That was pretty nerve-wracking. Race day, some interesting things happened. I did obviously finish the marathon, and we'll get into all that. The gear that I used, the shoes I used, and some shoe recommendations for you if this is your first time or if you're just going to be a slow marathoner, which is totally fine. And then we'll talk about some analysis on what I know I could do better, what time I definitely am confident I could finish in, and then we'll take a quick second to talk about you and what I think you are capable of. So, background info on me: I'm 29 years old, I live in LA, and I'm 175 pounds. I never played sports in school, never was super athletic. I did martial arts on and off for a few years, went to the gym on and off for a few years, never was a cardio guy, so no serious background in anything. And 5 months ago, I had never run, ever. I mean, I had jogged with friends a few times years ago, nothing recently. And I basically decided I wanted to do a marathon. And so we'll talk about the training that I did and kind of that process. So I could make a whole video on this, but I started running a few miles a day here and there at a very, very, very slow, probably slower than you think pace, like 17, 18 minutes a mile. I'm talking someone could comfortably walk next to me while I'm basically doing a running motion, jogging at a walking speed. So I kind of built my base like that. I was doing a lot of trail running. The Olympics came around and I got really interested in doing a marathon. So at that point, when the Olympics came around, I had been running June, July, and part of August. So 2.5 months I had been running, 10 weeks, and I had 10 weeks left until this marathon that I did, which was November 3rd, the inaugural Las Vegas Marathon. I could make a whole video on that too, and I probably will. The race was epic. They did a really good job organizing it. The course was stunning. But yeah, so that's some background info. So let's talk about what I did for the training. Being 10 weeks out, I could have done a marathon farther away or in 2025, obviously, but I was inspired. I felt like 2.5 months ago, my fitness was at a point where I absolutely was not ready, but it would not be impossible to get ready with more structured training. That was my thought process. So I followed a plan from Runna, which is an app that basically has predetermined plans, and then it uses AI and gives you custom coaching at a really low cost compared to paying a running coach or compared to reading a bunch of books and watching dozens of videos and getting burnt out, which is kind of where I was at. I didn't read books, but I did a lot of research and I thought I need something structured. So I followed 10 weeks of this structured plan. Prior to the plan, my first 2.5 months of running, I got it up to about 20 to 25 miles a week. just by myself. Pretty much all of that was easy runs and very slow easy runs, trying to stay in zone 2, certain heart rate parameter, and most of that was on the trails. So jumping into this plan basically had me do a long run every week. It had me do speed work and interval workouts, which I've never done, never had heard of. And those were hard, but they definitely gave me some awesome confidence. And then it had me do easy runs and different warm-ups and cool downs and just hit certain mileage goals. So injuries and difficulties. So 4 weeks out or 5 weeks out from the race, I had Achilles tendonitis. Basically was running near the end of a long run, which I think was a half marathon, and I got this sharp pinch in my Achilles, and I was like, oh, that can't be good. Walked for a bit, tried to run again, sharp pinch, and anyways, happened a few times, saw a physical therapist. Basically, in short, missed an entire week of running, being like 4.5 weeks out from the marathon. And then the final 4 weeks, I basically had to cut my mileage in half. So I missed the 16, 18, and 21 mile long runs heading into this marathon. The farthest I had ever ran before I ran this marathon was 14 miles, which was one of those runs from the Runna training plan. So I missed the highest mileage part of the block, which was supposed to really mentally prepare me. Anyways, I missed that, and I went from like supposed to do 35 to 40 miles for those really big weeks to doing like 15 to 20 in those really big weeks. And yeah, and then the final 2 weeks was a taper coming into the marathon, and I did even less mileage than it wanted me to do. And then we come into race week. So this is a very important time, especially if it's your first marathon, where you want to make sure that you're just healthy and you're rested and you're feeling good. All the training you've done, there is nothing you can do in the final week before the marathon as far as building your fitness. Whatever you have, and you just have to accept that at this point. Let the legs recover, get all that stress out. This is what I did, and it worked great. Stretch, go for a few easy runs if you want, just to handle the nerves and remind yourself that you're still a runner, and then come into the race as fresh as possible. Countdown. So race week was pretty nerve-wracking. I was just, only having done 14 miles and then trying to confront this idea of doing 26 is a little bit crazy. And I figured, whatever, I'm just going to run it. I'm going to run at the goal pace that I want to run at, which is 11 minutes a mile. That's not really a realistic pace, being that I missed the highest mileage part of the training block. But I said, okay, I'm just going to do it. So race day comes around. Now, pre-race, this was Sunday, November 3rd. So this was the start of daylight savings time in much of the U.S., including California. And so that gave me an extra hour of sleep, which was awesome, but I could not sleep. One thing that's interesting about this marathon I did is it was a 6 a.m. start time, which is very normal for a marathon. And I'm not really a morning person. I did some morning training runs. Anyways, 6 a.m. start time, but it started up in an area called Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. I don't want to bore you, but it's gorgeous. I'm sure I'll put some clips in this video. And the only way to get up there on race day was to take one of the race organizers' buses from downtown Vegas, 26 miles roughly, up to this area. So they made me load my bus at 3:30 a.m., which to me was like psychotic for a 6 a.m. start. Anyways, so I had to wake up at 3 a.m. So I went to bed at 7 p.m. the day before, which didn't work. I was super nervous. My resting heart rate was like 10 or 20 beats per minute higher than it normally is. I was just like antsy, and I could not sleep for the life of me. So I finally fell asleep at like 12:30 a.m. and then had to wake up by 3 a.m. latest. Daylight savings gave me a little bit of extra sleep, so that was nice, but I basically slept 3 hours. So I wake up at 3:10, somehow didn't hear my alarms, probably from not really getting enough sleep. And I basically had to jump in the shower. I'm one of those people where I have to shower in the morning to wake up, or I just don't feel good. So jumped in the shower. Thankfully, I had all my stuff laid out. So I threw on my shoes, my tights, my shirt, my hat, sunglasses, grabbed my little bag of stuff that I was gonna carry with me on the race. And I literally had to run half a mile from the hotel to the bus station and still barely made it in time. So then I got on the bus, and that was the start of race day. We bussed up there, we waited.
Live from the FEMA camp.
Real quick, we are going to talk about all things gear, shoes. What did I use? What was successful? So for shoes, I wore the Hoka Cielo X1. Really, really good shoe. I tried a bunch of shoes in my training and my long runs, and finally, like 3 weeks out from the race, I settled on this shoe. But the Cielo X1, I think, is going to be one of the for sure top choices, if not the top choice for first-time marathoners, mid-pack or slow marathoners, probably even great for elite runners because it's a good shoe. But you have the carbon plate, you have a high stack height, a good rocker, it's supportive, it's comfortable, it's just an awesome shoe. Now in those shoes, I had custom fitted insoles from Roadrunner Sports. You can get these from probably any running store, or even get some insoles online. These were just molded to my feet, and they really, really helped my comfort. I highly recommend go to a running store, get some custom insoles if you're at all dealing with like foot pain or plantar fascia or stability issues. Do that. For my bottoms, I had the Janji Trail half tights. I wanted something that I could jam a bunch of gels and my phone and stuff in and not worry about it moving around too much. I tested these extensively on my long runs, and they're incredible. So Janji Trail half tights, major W. Shirt was like a random Nike run shirt. Hat was a random running hat. Sunglasses, random glasses. Socks, I used toe socks. I can't pronounce the name of the company, so I'm not going to try and get flamed for the rest of my life. But those were good on my long runs for helping to prevent blisters. And then I used Body Glide, which is sort of like a deodorant stick for chafing. And I put that on my nipples. Yes, that is very necessary for men and probably women. But rub that on your nipples, rub that on your inner thighs, all over my feet, bottom of my feet, every toe, heels. And as a result of doing that, I had one blister, which was on my right pinky toe on the bottom. Just one of those things that happens. Small blister, didn't bother me until the very end of the race. And yeah, Body Glide, W. And then I used something called Squirrel's Nut Butter, which is an interesting name, but it's pretty much literally nut butter. Use it on personal areas. And on your behind. And pro tip, really get it in there and try this stuff on your long runs because you will chafe in some weird places. So I used that, didn't have any chafing down there. Highly, highly recommended. Then obviously I had my handheld bottle, which was from Amp, I think is the company. Basically just a 20-ounce bottle, which is probably bigger than you need. I would get a smaller one next time. And then it has this big zippered pouch. So I was able to, because if you're gonna take 4.5, 5, 6, 7 hours to do a marathon like me, you're gonna need a lot of gels. And you can either wear a vest if your race allows it. I just didn't want to wear a vest. I don't like the idea of it. So I wanted tights where I could stuff them with gels. And then my bottle, I had like 4 or 5 gels in there. That was great. So that's it for gear. Oh, and then of course I have a Garmin Forerunner watch. This is like the cheapest legit running watch that you can get. I got it like 2 weeks ago. Always just ran with my phone with either Strava or Runner or something, and it worked out. So now I want to talk about sort of what I ate pre-race. So I had no time for my planned breakfast, obviously, because I couldn't sleep, and then I woke up late, and there you go. I had sort of planned that that could happen, which was nice. I had 2 BPN Go bars, which is basically like an oats carbohydrate bar from a great company called BPN. I used a lot of their stuff, so you're going to hear about their name again because everything I've tried from them works good and my stomach handles it and it tastes good, which is like the ultimate trifecta. It does its job, it tastes good, and your stomach doesn't hate you, or you don't have to crap your pants in the middle of a run. So they nail all 3 for me. The owner seems to be a really cool guy from all his videos I've watched. And yeah, so I had 2 of their Go bars is what they're called. Each one is 200 calories. So I had 400 calories. And then they make an electrolyte carb drink mix called G1M Sport. So I drank a scoop of that in a small bottle of water, had my first bar. These were both while I was on this bus at right about 3:45 or 4 a.m. Then about 45 minutes pre-race, I had the second bar and I had another scoop of that carb electrolyte drink mix with a bottle of water. And then I had like a small can of cold brew coffee. I need my coffee. But basically I had 2 small bottles of water, both loaded up with electrolytes and carbs, and then 2 carb type of bars and my coffee. So the race started very downhill. On this course, there was 2,000 feet of elevation descent, and I think all of that was in the first half of the race. So first half of the race, I was feeling good. I was actually above my goal pace. Not really because it was downhill, that did make it easier, but really there was so much energy and such an adrenaline dump. And that's one of the things, if you can't hit the mileage you want, or you like haven't run 20 miles and you're like, how do I run 26? Same here. That race day energy is different. We're starting.
Champion right here, let's go.
What's up, guys? Let's get it.
And you're just with so many people. And I think part of it was, it was just hard to go slower than everyone else you're with. I mean, it looked like a mass migration out of a movie or something. It was really cool. But that had me running about a 10:30, 10:40 per mile pace. My goal pace for the marathon was 11 minutes to 11:15. So I was slightly ahead of that for the first like 5 miles. And then this is where the first thing I encountered that I didn't expect was a very lengthy line for a porta potty. At that point, I just really had to pee and I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I wanted to just finish the race. So I waited in line for these porta potties and it took 6 or 7 minutes, which was sort of annoying. I didn't stop my watch for any of this. This is just a real experience. So I waited, went to the bathroom, and then I kept running. And then after that point, pretty much through the first half, so a half marathon, I think my average pace was around 11:20. So it slowed down a little bit after the first downhill, but I was still like crushing it on pace. And then really it was interesting. Nothing really got hard until mile 20. And I know everyone says that. There's kind of a classic saying that maybe you've heard that if a marathon was 20 miles, anyone could do it. And I didn't really know what to think of that, but I definitely agree with it now. So starting at mile 20 or just before, maybe 19.5, things got really difficult. I also should mention I had another lengthy bathroom stop, a number 2 one. It happens. That was at mile 17. And I said, I just want to finish. I want to be comfortable. So I got to go and do that. So in total, between porta potties, I wasted bare minimum 20 minutes between several P stops and this number 2 stop. So I'm factoring that into what I could do better for next time. But yeah, so at mile 20, it got really hard. And it's interesting because the injury I had in training, an overuse injury, was Achilles tendonitis or tendinopathy. And my Achilles was great for the entire marathon. No irritation, didn't even think about it. I did use kinesiology tape. It's called rock tape, but I bought some. It's like a roll of 10-inch strips, and they have a little fold-out pamphlet that says, here's how you tape this part and your knee and hamstrings and Achilles. So I did the one for the Achilles, put a couple pieces of tape to help support it on race day, and that seemed to work great. But what I wasn't expecting was my hips and my hip flexors felt like somebody was stabbing me. I'm probably exaggerating, but every time I would try and pick it up, it was just like, my hips. Never had that in training. So that was one of the things that started at mile 20. And from 20 to 26.2, I basically, at that point, realized that I was going to have to do some walking if I was going to finish this thing. So I did sort of a very random run walk all the way up to the finish. I would walk for however long it took for my heart rate to come back down below like 140.
There he is. He's at mile 21 and 26, baby. Look at that. The champion is arriving. He is now approaching.
And then I would get back into, at that point, really a kind of slow jog, but it was definitely faster than my walking speed. So I did that on and off. I'd walk a few minutes, and then I'd try and jog the next mile, and then I'd walk. And yeah, as far as fueling during the race, I was aiming to consume something like a gel every 25 to 30 minutes. I found in my training that if I did more than that, just my stomach would always feel bad or I'd feel bloated. I know that at least 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour is ideal for most people, but that just didn't work for me in my training. So I think I ended up hitting right around 50 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. What I took for my fuel was another thing from BPN. It was their energy gels or carbohydrate gels called Go Gels. And this was like an apple cinnamon flavor. I had tried it in training and it was great. So I had 5 of those. Then I had 2 Martin 160 solid bars, which was sort of like a lightly chocolate flavored oat rice bar. 2 of those, 5 BPN Go Gels, and then 2 of the Martin caffeinated gels, which I saved for the second half of the race. I don't remember what times I took them, but I said, okay, now's probably a good time. Have a caffeine gel along with more carbs. And then I had 1 goo gel in the last few miles because I was just out of stuff. For hydration during the race was carrying a handheld bottle, and obviously that's how I had my electrolytes pre-race, and then I planned to basically just fill that up at every aid station. And it was a good weather day. I knew that I was really hydrated the few days before. I was really hydrated that morning with lots of electrolytes, and I didn't feel I'd need too many more electrolytes. The gels have some sodium. So my plan was, great, carry the bottle so I can drink when I want. Otherwise, take one of those little paper cups at every aid station, which was, I think, every 2 or 3 miles. So I did that, and then I had some friends and family there on race day. They gave me another bottle with those same electrolytes at miles 18 and mile 21. I just chugged those, and then we kept pushing. So hydration strategy was pretty simple. Bottle for peace of mind, and when I did get thirsty between aid stations. Otherwise, cup of water at aid stations, hydrated well before, plan to rehydrate well after. So I want to talk a little bit more about those last 6.2 miles, because it is really true, and it was true for me, that it started to be a real challenge at mile 20. So that's when the mental game really came in. Obviously, you're in uncharted territory if you're me, and probably you. You've never ran this far. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what weird things your body might do. I will say I didn't have any cramps, and a lot of people that were going my speed were complaining of all sorts of cramps. Never had a cramp in any muscle during or after the race. So that was awesome, and I credit my fueling strategy for that. But I had that weird hip flexor pain, and then otherwise, I mean, everything hurt. I'm pretty insensitive and like have a high pain tolerance, but it was painful. And then I just noticed when I'd pick it up to start running again, I'd have to just really mind over matter on the body for that and get up to the speed I wanted to go, and then go as long as I could, and then say, okay, heart rate's getting higher and I want to slow down. By the way, my average heart rate for the marathon was 151 BPM. I think the highest was like 170, which was only a few minutes randomly. Average was 151. And I noticed when it got above 160, 165, in that last part especially, that's when I would kind of feel like, yeah, I should probably walk, because it was just getting really, really efforty. But I did have enough energy to sprint through the finish line, so I'm going to show you that right now.
Red's right there. Being helped by Joshua. Nicholas Reno finishing up right here. Joao is right there as well. Congratulations.
They yelled out my name. Everyone was cheering. It was pretty cool. All right, so analysis. Was it worth it? Absolutely. You know, it took a lot of energy, and I'm sure for you guys, you'll know, or you're about to find out, that it's really not the marathon that is that hard. The energy of the day, the nerve, adrenaline dump, the crowd, the other runners, everything will kind of carry you through if your training was at least halfway decent. And the training is the hard part. That's the hundreds of miles and time every day or every other day that you're putting into this. You're focusing on your sleep. You're trying to eat as good as you can, at least, and you're just running, making playlists, trying not to get bored, trying new routes. That is the hard part. The race is like, yes, it's very hard, but it's cherry on top compared to the training. In my training, I think it was just over 450 miles over that 5 months. So 0 running, 450 miles, and then we have this 26.2 mile race. So that's the hard part. If you can follow a plan and find a way to keep yourself motivated, you can do it. Analysis. As far as me, what would I change, if anything, going into this, and what can I do better and what's my goal for next time. So obviously I did this in 5 hours and 26 minutes. That's including bare minimum 20 minutes of bathroom stops, which could be minimized or avoided. And that's including just not nailing that big part of my training. So I'm very confident I can do 4 hours and 30 minutes or under for my next marathon, which I plan to do in about 5 months from now. What you should do other than what I did is strength training from day one. If you're not doing strength training, whatever you want to do, you can look up tons of videos, but things to strengthen your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your feet, your ankles, your core. This is all very, very important. Number one, for not getting injured. And number two, for being able to do the marathon. And if you feel correctly, hopefully not hitting any kind of wall. And then post-marathon. It's now Thursday, so I ran Sunday. And today is the first day that I can walk around without hobbling. After the race, I didn't have cramps, but it was very sore, but like nothing was locked up yet. And then Monday, I didn't work. I had that day off and I stayed home, basically sat on the couch, tried to avoid the stairs. That day sucked. Tuesday, I was able to move around and walk around, obviously still kind of limber and painful and slow. Yesterday, Wednesday was better, but not great. Today is pretty good, like my quads and even femurs still like hurt to the touch, but I don't feel it much when I'm walking unless I'm on stairs. So strength training is a great way to keep yourself from getting injured and finish feeling strong and probably recover faster. So I'm gonna add that. And then not getting injured obviously is huge. I got injured, work with a PT, get through it, mind over matter. You can do this barring, a really nasty injury, which I think you can avoid. And then just cutting down on my bathroom breaks and things, I think I can finish in under 4.5, and that will be my goal at the 2025 LA Marathon.